What is up, YouTube? Daniel here, and we are back again here on my channel, Life with Dan, where we go into different business topics like stock market investing, entrepreneurship, finance, money and life decisions, etc. For this week's video, what I'd like to do is to briefly go over the topic of Bitcoin. The popular cryptocurrency has been making a lot of market headlines recently in the past couple of weeks, months, as major business figures start to invest into the cryptocurrency and talk more and more about it. There's all kinds of articles out now at this point, podcasts, videos, interviews, all kinds of content that one could check out with, big prominent business figures having changes of heart towards the cryptocurrency. So I just thought I'd make a video to briefly touch on that news a little bit and to bring up the conversation, the argument of whether or not now is a good time to start looking into and keeping an eye on Bitcoin in particular as a future investment. So we will briefly go over what Bitcoin is if you don't know or maybe have heard the word but never looked into it really, just kind of heard about it from a distance. But mostly the heart of this video is going to be entertaining that argument whether or not Bitcoin is a good investment to start looking into and looking into what these major business figures have said as of late. If you end up getting good value out of the video, or if you just enjoyed it, or if I'm just a cool guy, I would appreciate it if you could do me the favors of hitting the like and subscribe buttons so that you can follow along with Life with Dan and I can continue to grow the channel, and I would really appreciate it. But anyways, with all that said, we'll get into the video right after the intro. So to briefly go over what Bitcoin is, for those of you that never heard about it or maybe never looked into it, Bitcoin is the first and most popular cryptocurrency, or maybe we could call it a digital currency, that was introduced to the public. It was introduced alongside a groundbreaking technology known as blockchain, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. Blockchain is essentially the public ledger, the technology that supports coins like Bitcoin to be traded. I've heard the reference made once about the relationship between Bitcoin and blockchain. Blockchain is like the internet and Bitcoin is like email. And both Bitcoin and blockchain were released by someone or some group of people, we don't know actually, the identity is still a mystery, using the alias Satoshi Nakamoto. One thing I found super interesting about Bitcoin and blockchain when I was doing my research on the two things was when they were released. They were introduced in 2009 to the public. So that was when you could start, buying and trading Bitcoin, 2009. And what's crazy about that is, obviously, as many of you know, that's right after the recession that we had, the housing crisis, when the market crashed and everything like that. But the timing of the release of Bitcoin and blockchain is crazy. So whoever Nakamoto is, pretty interesting what their, I'm assuming what their intentional move there was with that. So cash right now today is still the most discreet, the most anonymous way of doing business, right? If you buy something in cash, it can't be traced to you because it was just cash and whatnot. What Bitcoin does is kind of provide something similar to that. It's not as free, of course, because it is digital, it's somewhere, but it's really close to being super anonymous. And that's kind of why banks and big financial institutions were very much against Bitcoin and kind of blockchain at the beginning. They've come around more to blockchain now, still kind of negative towards Bitcoin. The reason why big banks and financial institutions really disliked blockchain and Bitcoin, especially when they first came out, was because blockchain, what essentially it does in regards to like Bitcoin and different types of digital currencies, it makes it so that there's no need for a middleman in between you and me doing a transaction of money with each other. So right now we use banks and financial institutions, and they are the middleman between your money and my money. And if I send you money, they have record of it and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of have everything in their little fortress of a system, right? Each bank has their system and whatnot. What they don't like is that blockchain takes away the need for them. So you and me can trade blockchain and it's recorded on this public ledger, which I guess is like this different way of keeping track of everything. It's private in the sense that you don't see your own names, right? It's not like I could see everything that my neighbor is doing through Bitcoin, but it is technically all recorded on a public ledger where every transaction is like this code and every person is like this code. And it's really fascinating. I don't fully understand it yet, but basically what we need to understand for right now and for what effect it's having on the world now is that although people have come around to blockchain technology a little more, Bitcoin and blockchain and the different digital currencies are a threat to what our financial system is now. It's a threat to what the order of things is right now and the way money is regulated. So that's kind of why I'm really interested into getting into this. And as an investor, my ears are perked up now and I'm listening a bit more because when you think about the scope of this, right, how big Bitcoin and blockchain, how big of an impact they could have, they've already had, and the dislike that major institutions like, the big banks have towards them, there's a lot going on here, and it's something that should not be ignored, especially as an investor. Having hit a high of about $20-some thousand per Bitcoin at some point in 2017, and to where now being somewhere in the 11,000 something per Bitcoin, more than halfway through 2020, very easy to see that this is a super volatile thing to invest in, but a very controversial, very interesting thing to look into, and something that I would say is the investment of the times with regards to eyes on it and the controversy behind it and the uncertainty of it really going forward. So that's a little bit on Bitcoin. I didn't go too much into blockchain. Like I said, it's the public ledger technology that supports it, the thing that holds all of the Bitcoin transactions together, and the software, that allows for it all to exist. But that's a little bit on Bitcoin. To go into the first bit of news that I wanted to touch on with regards to Bitcoin. As it reads here on this CoinDesk article headline here, it says Square puts 1% of total assets into Bitcoin in surprise $50 million investment. This article came out October 8th, as you guys can see there. As we continue to read, it says Square, the payments company owned by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, announced Thursday it has purchased 4,709 Bitcoin. It says Square believes that cryptocurrency is an instrument of economic empowerment and provides a way for the world to participate in a global monetary system, which aligns with the company's purpose. We believe that Bitcoin has the potential to be a more ubiquitous currency in the future, said the Square CFO. For a company that is building products based on a more inclusive future, this investment is a step on that journey. So that's quite the powerful thing to hear from Twitter. Twitter sees Bitcoin and blockchain technology as a way of empowering more people, of making it easy for the world to transact with each other. And what's even crazier about this is that Twitter has low-key been putting money into Bitcoin for a long time now. As you guys can see on this article, it says here, Twitter CEO is buying $10,000 in Bitcoin each week. This was 2 years ago that this article came out. Apparently, they have been putting into Bitcoin for a while now and have been, bullish on its value for some time. And obviously, if they've been investing since 2017, 2018, they've had a decent return. I would assume now on Bitcoin, there's been plenty of dips to buy into. So definitely, I'm assuming Twitter and Square are way up on their Bitcoin investments. It's a pretty interesting thing to see, and it raises a lot of questions about, the potential value of Bitcoin. It makes you think, okay, well, if Twitter and Square, Jack Dorsey is CEO of both of those companies, if they're really going behind Bitcoin like this, what does that say? That's really what made me think about it and what got me interested in starting up this research for this video. But to move on to another company, because it's not just Square, actually there's even bigger investments out there. Here on this article from BizJournals, MicroStrategy says here buys $250 million in Bitcoin as CEO says it's superior to cash. Let's look at this tweet here that Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, actually tweeted himself September 15th of this year. Says on September 14th, MicroStrategy completed its acquisition of 16,796 additional Bitcoin. So they already had a position at an aggregate purchase price of $175 million. To date, we have purchased a total of 38,250 Bitcoins at an aggregate purchase price of $425 million. That's inclusive of fees and expenses. As we look a little further down below there, that would mean, excluding expenses, their Bitcoin position is worth roughly $416 million at current prices. That is completely insane, guys. I mean, MicroStrategy with their CEO, Michael Saylor, is almost at a $500 million position on Bitcoin alone. What is it that they think is going to happen? What do they know, or what do they see going forward? There is actually an interview out that Michael Saylor recently did after this $400 million Bitcoin investment becoming public. I'll put a link to that video down in my description. It's a Stansberry research interview, but basically some of the things that Michael touched on when asked about Bitcoin and his investment that he made with MicroStrategy is that he actually prefers Bitcoin to gold as a hard asset to hold over the long term. He made arguments about how it'd be better off to hold Bitcoin, and basically that he feels completely comfortable having Bitcoin as opposed to cash over the next couple of years. In addition to that, here on this screenshot that I found on a different article, we can see that there are several publicly traded companies that are investing into Bitcoin, that are buying more and more more coins and stacking up, the amount of Bitcoin that they hold. Not only that, guys, but something very interesting that just happened recently, actually just this week, our Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke at the IMF conference that just happened. IMF stands for International Monetary Fund. And what Jerome basically said on there was that the federal government is already in communications with private companies looking into entertaining the idea of a digital currency. Now, he did specify and say that right now there's no plans to move forward with anything, that he's more focused on making sure that they do things right rather than being first, is what he said. But the fact that the conversation is being had amongst world leaders, the people that make decisions about monetary policy and international money trade and things like that, the fact that they are all discussing a digital currency and kind of leaning towards how it's needed in the future, is a crazy thing to look at. Jerome did mention also that in his eyes, a digital currency would complement cash and money that we have today, not replace it. Who knows whether that's true or how much of that it will come to be and whatnot. But I just think it's insane that the world leaders are having this conversation. Ultimately, what's that going to do to Bitcoin, guys? Because people like Jack Dorsey, other people in business, they think that once that happens, if that happens, the establishing of a new monetary policy where we use a digital currency, once that happens, is it going to be Bitcoin at the forefront of that? Because it is the most powerful, the most established digital currency that's out there. So, it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to look at. But what we do know is that digital currency is coming. Is it inevitable? Might be safe to say that it is. And as we relate this to being a stock market investor, when you think about whether you should continue to invest in the stock market or, start trickling into cryptocurrencies, when you have billionaire investors like Howard Marks coming out and saying that investors going forward should expect very low or negative returns for the market, when people come out and say that the economy is too shaky for the market to be as high as it is, for stocks to be as high as they are, it might make a little sense, might not seem too crazy, to not be 100% stocks as an investor, to have some money into a cryptocurrency, preferably Bitcoin. On my part, I do feel somewhat convicted about not having any cryptocurrency, in my portfolio. I personally would probably only go with Bitcoin right now, as really it's the only one that I know anything about. But also, I do think that there is something to be said about the fact that it's the first, the original, and it's like the backbone of this whole thing. So, if I did invest in cryptocurrency, I'd be sticking with Bitcoin. I'd be going with that one for sure. Maybe something like Ethereum, which seems to be like that runner-up. But I'm going to continue doing research on these things and possibly doing more content on Bitcoin and on cryptocurrencies going forward. This was my introduction to this world, with these headlines and everything. I just thought, man, this is crazy. Like, we can't not talk about this. This world is not going away. Bitcoin is not going away. Ethereum, all of them, they're not going away. Which ones are the winners? We have yet to see. But there is something to see here, guys. And as investors, we should be on top of it. I think with how high markets have run, I personally wouldn't jump right now. If I do decide to start buying into Bitcoin, I'll definitely make a video about it and I'll share that position with you guys. But for now, I'm just saying we should keep our eyes and ears to the market news and to everything that's being said with regards to this. I know that as a retail investor, it's hard to know what's real and what's not out there when you're doing your research and your due diligence. I mean, when you have a Warren Buffett call Bitcoin rat poison squared, but then you have a Jack Dorsey, a more modern tech company CEO, putting money into Bitcoin, it's confusing who's right, who's wrong. And that's what sucks about being the little guy, right? But we can empower ourselves, guys. We can do the research. And that's kind of what keeps me going with this on a personal note, just to kind of let you guys in on how I'm feeling about this channel and everything. It's things like this, the ability to enlighten people a little bit more about things that are just out of our reach. It's things like that that keep me going with this channel. It's things like that that get me excited about the next video. Like I said from the beginning, that's the whole point of this channel. And I would encourage everyone to take the time, after this video, go watch that interview where Michael, the CEO of MicroStrategy, talks about why he did it. Go look into Bitcoin and what, the Bitcoin fanatics out there are saying. Listen to everything. I always say, take all the information in with a grain of salt. Come to your own decision. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, here to stay, worth something more than it is today? We'll have to wait and see. Thanks for tuning into today's video. If you guys got any value, like I said, I'd appreciate if you can hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps me grow the channel. It helps keep me going. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks to each and every single one of you. Until then, this is Life with Dan.